Aaron Rodgers is not going anywhere. I have it on good authority, that he is going to be extended. I don't know to the tune of what, but they're working on an extension. They're going to make Devontae Adams the highest paid wide receiver in all of football. David Bakhtiari should be good to go by the start of next season. Zadarius Smith is still there. So those are your 4 cornerstones.
Boat. Yeah. Boat. Pencil. Woo. Yeah. Hey. You ain't know about it, but you know it now. Say you gotta hear it from the golden mouth. That's that. Go talk. That's that. Go talk. That's that. Go talk. That's that. Go talk. Hey. Worldwide, but I'm so south. They say you gotta hear it from the golden mouth. That's that. Go talk. That's that. Go talk.
This episode is powered by Poddex.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Go Talk podcast. Today's a very special episode today, twofold. Number one, we're talking about the NFC North, which is great. It's home of the Packers. Secondly, and more importantly, we've got a guest on the show, as you can see, Justin Marville, who's the host of this Justin Sports Show. Also, as you can see, donning the gear, he is also a Packers fan. So this is just a phenomenal episode all around for me. As always, Go Talk podcast, powered by Poddex. What's up, Justin? Welcome to the show.
Thanks again first for having me. And, anytime I have a chance to talk about my Green Bay Packers, I am not going to turn that down. But, yeah, I follow your stuff. Tremendous job that you're doing. I love what you put out there. So it was just when you reached out to me about coming on the show, no way I was going to turn it down, especially if we're talking about Green Bay.
Oh, thank you, man. I greatly agree with you, Jay. And right back at you. I follow you, and I mentioned this in the other episode I did with Adam. I watch your guys' live on Thursdays on Instagram at 8. So it's always a pleasure. I talked to Adam. I was like, do you think Justin would come on the show? He was like, if you're talking about the Packers, absolutely. I was like, perfect. So I'm glad you wanted to do this, and I greatly appreciate it. As always, like I said, this episode is powered by Poddex. This is another edition of our off-season reports here on the show, where we're just going through each of the 8 divisions, talking about the teams, recapping seasons, looking ahead. In the other episodes, we did first to worst, simply because I have something special planned at the end for the Packers. I decided we go worst to first for this one. So we'll jump right in with the Lions.
So you're telling me we have to start with Detroit on a podcast? Seriously?
We do. I think it'll be worth it. It's not the best, just because there's not a lot going on.
Fair enough.
They started 5-11. There's really not much to talk about. They traded Matthew Stafford to the Rams for Jared Goff and some trade conversation. Do you think? I personally think that I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, obviously they wanted to part ways with Matthew Stafford. This is not at all an upgrade at their quarterback position. Matthew Stafford, it's weird to say it as a Packers fan. Matthew Stafford doesn't get a lot of credit. Nope. He's very talented and doesn't get the recognition, and that has a big part to do with the fact that he plays for the Detroit Lions. Do you think Jared Goff will bring some sort of change to this Lions organization? Do they win more games next year than they did last year?
First, no, most definitely not. And when you look at this trade, right, I actually like it for Detroit because it was not about upgrading at the quarterback position. Yeah. It was basically, we are paying, I don't want to say a premium because it's not like Matt Stafford's contract right now is exorbitant or anything. When you look, obviously at Patrick Mahomes, $500 million, and then you start to come down. Deshaun Watson, $40 million per season. This was a situation of, we don't really want to pay this much money for a quarterback when we're not in a winning scenario anymore.
Yeah. So
we just want to move on. And if you can get 2 first, a third, and a starting quarterback from Matt Stafford, you take that any day of the week.
Absolutely.
But do they win more games? Absolutely not. As you're a Packers fan, you have seen Matt Stafford in these games. A lot of people from the outside looking in don't understand. Every single season, Detroit gives us a ton of problems.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it was 2 seasons ago, I think when we missed in playoffs, Detroit actually swept us that season.
Yeah.
I think actually it was 2 years in a row that we did not win a single game against Detroit. And it is because Matt Stafford is really, really good, and we get the best of him in those 2 division matchups. Yeah. So I would like to say that LA is getting a really good quarterback. As you mentioned before, it is just that he was in a position where, he's playing in Detroit, so he's not going to get a lot of national TV time, and people just don't know how good he is.
Yep.
But for Detroit's point of view, if you're going to get 2 first, a third, and a starting level quarterback for Matt Stafford, then you take that.
Absolutely. And my biggest knock on Jared Goff has always been the inconsistency. I mean, that season they went to the Super Bowl, that was the year they had that epic Monday night game against the Chiefs when we all thought that was going to be the Super Bowl matchup, the 54-51 win at home against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think that was really just lightning in a bottle. We haven't seen Jared Goff get back to that level of offensive production at the quarterback position. A lot of people attribute that to maybe the league has caught up with Sean McVay and his coaching style. I just flat out think that we're seeing the real Jared Goff right now. We have seen the real Jared Goff for the last few seasons. I don't expect Jared Goff to ever get back to that level. He's definitely not getting back to the level now that he's with Detroit. As you mentioned, I think this was just a mutual divorce between Matthew Stafford and the Lions, and this was the best offer available when you consider it. Again, Matthew Stafford doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think I said this on another episode. I think Matthew Stafford to the Rams makes the Rams Super Bowl contenders. I always thought the Rams were a quarterback away, and I think they have their quarterback. They've got it. They had the best defense in the league last year. They're getting Matthew Stafford, who, if I'm not mistaken, last season threw for almost 4,500 yards, something of that nature. So, Matthew Stafford can still play. Matthew Stafford can get you wins, and when you're in a tough NFC West division where you've got the Seahawks, you've got the Cardinals, who appeared last year to be on the right next step to contention. And then, of course, you had the 49ers, who, if it weren't for the litany of injuries that they suffered, would have been right there in the mix as well. You're going to need those wins, especially within the division. So props to Matt Stafford and the Rams, for making that step. The other thing, too, for the Detroit Lions, other than a new quarterback, is they got a new coach. I think of all the coaching hires, this one's the worst.
And that's saying a lot. When Philadelphia hired Nick Sirianni. So that is really saying a lot that this is the worst. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is about Dan Campbell is it's not that he doesn't have the resume. He's got the resume, but his opening interview, his opening presser was just, I don't even think there's words that can describe what we witnessed at that opening presser with the things that he was saying. And it was just really, really weird. I think that'd be the word, is just really weird. You don't hear those words from a head coach openly. None of it made sense. He's talking about biting off kneecaps and head button and breaking ankles, and I don't know.
I wonder if he was at a press conference or was he preparing for MMA fight, because I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
What are we?
I don't know. I guess we'll see.
What makes it more puzzling for me, the coaching hire of Dan Campbell, and it goes back to what a lot of coaches of color talk about. How then do you target Dan Campbell? And again, this is no knock on what Dan Campbell would have previously done. But when you look, and I hate to make him the poster child of this, but you have Eric Bieniemy out there, and we've seen the results of him being the offensive coordinator at Kansas City. Like, you have the best quarterback, arguably of all time right now. You've produced the league's best offense for the last 2-3 seasons under Eric Bieniemy. And I know the knock is that, well, he doesn't call plays. Well, neither did Matt Nagy, or I want to say, who is the other assistant that got a job? There's somebody else, but neither did Matt. The guy that got released from Philadelphia. He didn't call plays either. Doug Peterson didn't call. Doug Peterson nor Matt Nagy call plays under Eric. Oh, so sorry. He didn't call plays under Andy Reid either, and they got jobs. So then it makes you question, why did you look past somebody like Eric Bieniemy? And then not only Eric Bieniemy, when you look at the Super Bowl, 3 of the 4 coordinators were black. You have a situation where Todd Bowles, in my mind, and not Tom Brady, who was the real MVP of that Super Bowl. You saw how great his defense was.
Absolutely.
Then on the other side of the football, you have Byron Leftwich. So 3 of these coordinators, all of whom were in the Super Bowl, you look past in favor of hiring Dan Campbell, who then talks about biting out kneecaps and uppercutting you when he comes up off the ground. What? And then you say Eric Bieniemy was a bad interview. Well, how much better could Dan Campbell be if in his first press conference, this is what he's saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, it's a difficult position to be in if you're Eric Bieniemy. I mean, obviously, he's still. I mean, he's going, whether he's a head coach or not, he's always going to have a job with Kansas City because they're going to continue to be successful. I think the Super Bowl was an anomaly. We've never seen the Chiefs get slapped around like that, the way that we saw them get slapped around by the Buccaneers. And all credit, as you mentioned, goes to Todd Bowles and that defense. Tom Brady won the MVP, but before Tom Brady, it should have been Rob Gronkowski, and before Rob Gronkowski, it should have been the entire Buccaneers defense. I mean, holding the Chiefs to less than 10 points in a Super Bowl is crazy when you think about just how really twitchy and just how epic that offense truly is. And the other thing too is, if I'm not mistaken, Patrick Mahomes ran 500 yards behind the scrimmage just trying to make things happen for his team. And the crazy thing is, some of these crazy throws he were making were actually catchable balls. So it's just really, no matter what happens, Eric Bieniemy is always going to have a home in Kansas City. I'd love to see Eric Bieniemy as a head coach. I think Eric Bieniemy would make a great head coach from an offensive perspective. Of course, he would need a solid defensive coordinator also to balance it out. But I don't know how you pick Dan Campbell over Eric Bieniemy.
I don't know. And even if you don't want Eric Bieniemy, as I said, you have Byron Leftwich, you have Todd Bowles, like you just mentioned, that you can't look past those two in favor of Dan Campbell and then say, as an organization, you're looking to move forward and win. You spent, I want to say, 3 years under Bill Belichick's disciple, because I'm not even going to mention his name. That's what I call him. You spent 3 years under him, without a single playoff appearance, without a single winning season, and this is after moving on from someone like Jim Caldwell, who in his 4 seasons got you to 2 playoff appearances, and I don't think any playoff wins, but 2 is
they did make it,
but 2 is still more than none. So then you look past Eric Bieniemy, who has had playoff success, who has had a record-setting offense, who is coaching the greatest quarterback we've probably ever seen.
We can sit here, we can try to rack our brains. The fact of the matter is, nothing has ever made sense about the Detroit Lions. We know that firsthand experience looking at them twice a year. I think for the sake of the show and the integrity of greatness, let's just move on to the Detroit Lions.
Please.
The Vikings, they finished third in the division. They were 7-9. This is a team that I think was really surprising to a lot of teams, to a lot of people around the league. The record was surprising. I don't think anyone expected them to go 7-9 after what they did the year before. I think a lot of people expected them to improve. Me personally, I thought the Vikings were actually going to win the division this year.
Shame on you.
I know, but so here's why. When I looked at our schedule, I was like, it's the schedule looked tough. I really wasn't all that pleased with what we did in the draft, and I felt like the 13-3 was really just lightning about it. And the thing is, our 13-3, as we'll talk about towards the end of the show, our 13-3 last year wasn't a good 13-3. We won a lot of games we really shouldn't have won that first year under Matt LaFleur, and so that's kind of my mentality around that. I thought we were going to make the playoffs. I just didn't think we'd win the division. Nonetheless, Vikings, they go 7-9. I want to start actually with Kirk Cousins, and I know originally I was going to start with Justin Jefferson, but I just want to say about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was very quiet last year, and he had a really good season. He threw for almost 4,300 yards. He had 35 touchdowns, just 13 interceptions. He completed almost 70% of his passes. I think Kirk Cousins will still be is the epitome of being the ultimate bridesmaid. He hasn't been the best quarterback in his division since he left Washington. And Kirk Cousins still, despite the fact that he's won a Monday Night Football game for the first time in his career just recently, he just beat the Saints in the playoffs last year. Kirk Cousins is still not a guy that I think anyone thinks really could lead them to a Super Bowl. I don't exactly know what the end game is here. It'd be interesting to see if the Vikings try to go draft and see if they draft a quarterback. Do you think the Vikings go draft with this quarterback thing, or do you think they're still sold on Kirk Cousins?
I like to say Kirk Cousins is a guy who is good enough to get you beat. He's just that good enough to get you beat. And you hit the nail on the head because he did have a quietly good season. Initially, they struggled because I think Dalvin Cook missed the first 2 games of the season, and then initially he was kind of limited due to injury.
Yeah.
But then you saw, as Dalvin Cook goes, the Minnesota Vikings go. And with this team, Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback you want leading your charge. And I want to say that a little bit better. You have to play complementary football with Kirk Cousins. And in that, I mean, it has to be a run-first offense, and then he plays off of play action. And that's when he's at his best. And you saw that as Dalvin Cook got better in the season, so too did Kirk Cousins. And that was not a coincidence. He is great at play action passes, naked bootleg stuff, where, you know, the defense is focused on stopping the run game first and foremost. So he is a quarterback you do not want basically to put the ball in his hands to tell you win a game for us, Kirk Cousins. That's not who he is. If you want a guy, though, to take care of the football while you are a run-first team, then Kirk Cousins is your guy. So sorry I've gone roundabout. To answer your question, do they draft a quarterback? It depends on who falls where.
Yep.
So let us take, for instance, we know for certain Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 to Jacksonville. That's the one certainty in this draft. We know that is it. Then it gets muddled after that. We expect, and if you listen to Draft Nicks, especially on ESPN, you figured that, I want to say, the next 4 quarterbacks are going to be gone within the first 10 picks.
Yeah.
It requires Minnesota to move up to get one of those. And in my estimation, if they don't move up to get one, then I don't see them drafting a quarterback with the quality that will be able to replace Kirk Cousins going forward. Like, I don't see that situation. You would have to move up again for someone like, in my mind, Zach Wilson.
Yes.
Are they willing to trade draft capital to get Zach Wilson when they have other needs? I don't think so. So I feel it depends on how far Matt Jones and Trey Lance falls.
That's the point, yeah.
If they fall to, you know, a spot where they don't have to move up too high to get them, because where they are right now, they're not going to be able to get them right now either. But if they can, like, let's say for argument's sake, move up 1 or 2 spots to get them, then I can see a situation, yes, that they draft either Matt Jones or Trey Lance. But neither of those two where they're drafting right now are expected to fall that low. So I do not see a scenario where they draft a quarterback, at least not in the first round. They have some other pressing situations to address. And so I want to get to your initial point. Minnesota's record did not shock me because a lot of people forgot they had heavy turnover in the back end of their defense. Xavier Rhodes left, I want to say in free agency, or was he released? And they were very, very, very young in that secondary. Now, while that may work against, I want to say, Chicago, who we'll get to just shortly, when you're playing Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford 4 games in the season, having a young secondary is not going to go very well for you.
Not at all, no.
And you mentioned our schedule was rough. Well, Minnesota's in our division, so they have the very same schedule. Yep. On top of that, they had to play Aaron Rodgers twice, and we didn't have to play Aaron Rodgers twice, obviously. So when you have that very inexperienced and young secondary going against, and they had to play against Aaron Rodgers and the tough schedule that we also had to play, I knew that I didn't expect them to miss the playoffs completely, but I figured under year 2 in Matt LaFleur's offense that we would post, and they had, I think, us going either 12-4 and 11 or 11-5 before the season started. They had some wins. They had some wins that I didn't even figure, because I expected us to lose in San Francisco again, but obviously injuries kind of changed that whole scenario. So I wasn't sold on the Minnesota Vikings at all when the season started, because I knew about that secondary.
Yeah.
But I just also didn't expect Dalvin Cook to miss that early part of the season, and then it even hurt that much worse.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing too that I think is worth mentioning is, you know, the loss of I'm drawing a blank here. The loss of Kevin Stefanski. Obviously that plays a big role as well in terms of offense. We saw what he did in Cleveland this year, getting the Browns to the playoffs, winning 11 games. The Browns are truly ahead of schedule right now in terms of where they're supposed to be in terms of their rebuilding process. But you mentioned Dalvin Cook, and I just wanted to bring up, you're right, he missed the first 2 games, and then he basically just is, after Derrick Henry, the best running back in the league for the rest of the year. I mean, when you have an offensive core like Dalvin Cook, where you're getting consistently, it seems like you're getting consistently from Dalvin Cook at least 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns every year out of Dalvin Cook. When you've got now Justin Jefferson, who was running up and off the Rookie of the Year, who shattered for. I mean, he the talent that this young man has is amazing. He had 88 receptions, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, he shattered the rookie receiving record this season. So this is an offense that I think can take the next step. I expect this Vikings team to make it back to the playoffs. The playoffs are now situated where at least 3 divisions are going to get 2 teams. If I had to bet on the NFC North putting 2 teams in the playoffs next year, I would say they would. I'd say it'd be the Vikings and the Packers. Obviously, I'm going to pick the Packers. This offense, it's an offense that doesn't get a lot of credit. I think their biggest hit heading into next season, and we're going to see if they can replace it, will be Kyle Rudolph. I think actually, and I don't think he'll fall this far, just because he's really talented. But the tight end out of Florida, whose name I'm drawing a complete blank on,
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. I think that he is going. I think he's heavily underrated heading into the draft. I actually think he's the best player in the draft.
I want to agree with you. Outside, when you get past Trevor Lawrence, I honestly believe Kyle Pitts is the best player in this draft. But
he's one player. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. The need at quarterback position, obviously the most important position in all football, is just going to demand that these quarterbacks are going to be taken before they should be taken. But I agree with you completely. Kyle Pitts is arguably the best player in this draft.
Yeah, I think he's the one player in the draft. And maybe you could put Trevor Lawrence in this category as well, although we know he's going to be off the board at number 1, so he doesn't really fit. I think he's the one player in the draft, though, aside from Trevor Lawrence, where any team that drafts him, you're going to look at and say that's a good pick. I mean, with an exception of, say, the Chiefs wouldn't draft him, the 49ers would draft him, obviously, because and neither would the Raiders, because they've got 3 of the best tight ends in the league in Darren Waller, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. But any team that picks Kyle Pitts, that's going to be a good pick. Because he's a really good tight end, and we've seen the value of tight ends rise over the last few years with George Kittle, with Travis Kelce, with the Darren Waller, who had an amazing season this past season as well. So I don't know if he'll be available, but they just got rid of Kyle Rudolph. Replacing Kyle Rudolph with Kyle Pitts wouldn't at all be a bad decision, and it would immediately fill in that gap. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft Kyle Pitts if Kyle Pitts is still on the board when the Vikings are picking, just because he would fit in that offense, I think, really well. I think he'd be a great complement with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson as well. And you don't really need Kirk Cousins really to play a big role in that offense for this offense to be successful. We kind of saw that a little bit last year. Obviously, because of all the defensive turnover, as you mentioned, they didn't have the record that many people expected. But Kirk Cousins doesn't have to be this great elite franchise quarterback for the Vikings to win football games. He just has to be good. And that doesn't he has to be elite to win a championship, obviously. But if the Vikings want to make the playoffs, Kirk Cousins just has to be Kirk Cousins. That's anywhere between 35 to 4,000. That's anywhere between 3,500 to 4,000 yards, at least 20 touchdowns, lower than receptions. He did that this season. They won 7 games. They missed the playoffs, but they won 7 games. So the formula is really simple, and I think that formula will continue to be the same next season, especially if they draft Kyle Pitts.
Basically, and I don't know if, again, Kyle Pitts is going to fall that low to Minnesota, wherever they're drafting. You're correct. They do indeed have to replace Kyle Rudolph at some point. But I want to figure that, probably they can find a lower draft choice other than Kyle Pitts to replace and get particularly similar value. Mm-hmm. But you hit the nail on the head. Formula, run the football, don't turn over the football. And now their secondary is going to be a year older, a year smarter, a year more experienced. So you're going to see a better Minnesota Vikings than the start of last season. Because I want to say the second half for Minnesota was particularly good, other than 2 troubling losses in my mind, and that was one to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know how you lose the Dallas Cowboys in that stretch. And I think they had a loss to the Bears as well. But we really saw a good Minnesota Vikings towards the back half of the season, and I think that momentum is going to carry forward into 2021.
And again, the importance of that losses are good because as we're moving on, the Bears were 8-8. And they made the playoffs. So the Vikings win those 2 games, they're in the playoffs. So those 2 losses proved to be very, very crucial in terms of playoff positioning for the Vikings. Speaking of the Bears, as I mentioned, they were 8-8. They lost in the wild card round in the first ever playoff game streamed on Nickelodeon. It was interesting. That was interesting to say the least.
To the
Mitchell
very
Trubisky-
least.
Yeah, it is true. Mitchell Trubisky was named Nick Nolan's most valuable player. So let's start with Mitchell Trubisky. He only played 10 games this year because they were trying to figure out the quarterback situation. He still completed 57% of his passes, threw for over 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Is Mitchell Trubisky the problem in Chicago? If you could assess the issue with Chicago right now as it stands, where would you point the finger first?
First, GM Ryan Pace. Most definitely. That is the guy who, and I want to remind everyone, not only did he pass on, obviously Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes was a uncertainty in that draft. Like, not everyone figured Patrick Mahomes would be who he is outside of Andy Reid.
Yep.
But Deshaun Watson was an easy pick. Like, this is a guy who won a national championship game while beating Alabama. And I'm not talking about the high-scoring Alabama offense we see now. I'm talking about in the era where their defense was what led the Crimson Tide. And he easily beat that. And you pass up on that quarterback. Not only do you pass up on Deshaun Watson, you trade picks to move up to take Trubisky at 2.
Yeah.
I want to say this. So this starts at Ryan Pace, number 1. Like, you don't draft. And I mean, when you hear people, they like to look back at these stories and you listen to people talk about that quarterback class, and I'm talking about the draft war rooms. Everyone rated at that time, I want to say Deshaun Watson won in terms of quarterbacks in that class.
Yeah.
So to pass on Deshaun Watson to take Trubisky, the error starts there. 1. This is going to sound weird, but Matt Nagy is the second one. And I want to say, yes, it is maybe unfair to him because he was not the coach when Trubisky was drafted.
Yeah.
He came in afterwards. That was John Fox. And I read a story. John Fox didn't want him either. John Fox didn't even want a quarterback, apparently. He wanted a defensive player. And I can't remember which high-end defensive player he wanted. I'd have to look back at that story. But he didn't even want a quarterback. But the reason I tab Matt Nagy as a huge problem in Chicago is that you know what Trubisky is, but most certainly you know what he is not. He is not an accurate pocket passer, that you know. So to get the best out of him, you have to move the pocket, have him throwing outside the hash marks, have him throw outside the I want to say the numbers.
Yeah.
You want him on the move. And that worked in Matt Nagy's first year. You saw a lot of read option offenses, a lot of play action stuff, a lot of him keeping it, because he's a dual threat quarterback, and that is when he's at his best.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Matt Nagy tried to convince or tried to transform Mitch Trubisky into what he is not. And as I said, he is not a pure pocket passer. That is clear. We know he cannot sit down in a pocket and make plays. He's just not accurate. Just does not see the field well enough. You have to capitalize on his dual threat ability, whether he's as a runner or, threaten people as a runner and then, make easy throws. Kind of what I want to say Cleveland does for Baker Mayfield. They cut the field in half for him. They don't ask him to make a lot of difficult reads. It's a run-first offense. And then, you ask him to make a lot of play-action passes, naked bootleg stuff, where you're just eliminating half the field. You're not asking him to go through progressions, making the throws easy. You have to do that for Mitchell Trubisky because he is not an Aaron Rodgers. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Tom Brady. He's just not those guys. He's not Deshaun Watson. So, yes, Mitchell Trubisky is a huge problem. But you also have to know your assets or your liabilities in this case and treat them as such. So this is why Matt Nagy is a huge problem. And I know now Chicago has to move on from Mitchell Trubisky and look to upgrade from Nick Foles, because if you're leaving Nick Foles behind or benching Nick Foles to go back to Trubisky, then you obviously know that Nick Foles is not the answer.
Yeah.
I'd go 1A, 1B, 1C, Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, Mitchell Trubisky.
The interesting thing about Mitchell Trubisky, and when we talk about Mitchell Trubisky this season, I think the place that people will go to is that Atlanta game because he got pulled from the game. If you look at that game, though, it was clear that they were just looking for a reason to pull him. They were losing the game, but Mitchell Trubisky was playing well, relatively speaking. I mean, it wasn't until he threw that interception where they were like, okay, let's pull him. And I mean, when you throw an interception and you're down, I mean, that gives you justifiable cause. But Mitchell Trubisky wasn't playing bad in that game, and that's kind of the game that people draw to in terms of, Mitchell Trubisky's failures. I'm a Packers fan. I'm never going to ever praise anybody outside of the Packers ever, especially not within this division. Mitchell Trubisky, I don't think Mitchell Trubisky deserves a lot of the heat that he gets. I'm not saying Mitchell Trubisky's great, because he's not. There's a lot of room for improvement. His decision-making is not that great. He throws a lot of errant balls. He does have a turnover issue. I'm not saying at all that Mitchell Trubisky is a great quarterback. What I am saying, though, is Mitchell Trubisky is a quarterback that can win you football games. Mitchell Trubisky, if I'm not mistaken, was the quarterback of this Bears team that went to the playoffs and everybody thought was going to the Super Bowl not too long ago. And he had a pretty good season that year. So I mean, I get it. The NFL is, what have you done for me lately? Lately, Mitchell Trubisky has done nothing, not for the league, not for the Bears. I get it. But is Mitchell Trubisky better than some of the other options out there? A handful of them he is. Are there other options out there where you think you would, obviously if you do this over, yes, you draft Deshaun Watson before Mitchell Trubisky. Yes, you draft Patrick Mahomes before Mitchell Trubisky. But hindsight is 20/20. And here's the thing. Other than Deshaun Watson, I think Deshaun Watson, of course, at the time, that was the confusion because, as you mentioned, Deshaun Watson just was coming off of a national championship win. Patrick Mahomes, as you mentioned, wasn't as prolific at Texas Tech as he is now. Patrick Mahomes isn't the guy in coming out of college that he is right now. And so I don't think that the Bears passing up on Patrick Mahomes is as egregious as them passing up on Deshaun Watson, because we didn't know that Patrick Mahomes was going to become one of the best quarterbacks ever in such a short period of time. And so I think on that aspect, I think the Bears in the front office, they do deserve a pass on passing on Patrick Mahomes. They don't deserve a pass on passing on Deshaun Watson, because we knew what Deshaun Watson was. We knew what he was going to be. Everything that we said he was going to be coming out of college, he has been that and more since being in the NFL. And I feel bad for Deshaun Watson that he's stuck in Houston right now. Do I think that the Bears are in the running for Deshaun Watson? Probably not. Could they potentially go out and get Deshaun Watson? Probably not. But would they try? I think so. I think that they would try to right that wrong in the eyes of the fan base. I just don't think they have it. I don't think they have it.
To be fair, though, there was a story that came out either yesterday or today saying that the Bears are going to be a huge contender. They didn't exactly name the package, but from what I've heard, the package is very lucrative for getting like a trade package for Deshaun Watson. Like, it is huge. So I can imagine it has to start somewhere around 3 first-round picks. My problem with that is that no matter what they offer, we'll never be able to match what Miami or New York can offer.
Absolutely.
Simply because their starting point is going to be one of those first-round picks that Miami and New York can offer. It's going to be either the second overall or the third overall pick, depending on which team you're talking about. And if you're moving on from Deshaun Watson, like, what better place to start than the second or third overall pick, where you have a Zach Wilson or Justin Fields laying down. And on top of that, when you look at New York and Miami, the litany of draft picks they can offer, plus young quarterbacks that they can give, because one team has Sam Darnold that they can also throw in if Houston does not like what's in the draft. And the other team has Tua Tagovailoa. Again, if you don't like Zach Wilson or if you don't like Justin Fields, then you have your choice of either Tua Tagovailoa or, as I said, Sam Darnold. None of these things Chicago has. You don't have a top 3 draft pick. You don't have a good young quarterback. So I don't see a situation. I do not care what the report says. No matter what Chicago offers, it will not match what New York and Miami can potentially offer for Deshaun Watson.
I would say that the best thing that the Bears could offer would be some trade package surrounding Khalil Mack. I think that's the best they can do. But again, to your point, like, the Jets, if I'm not mistaken, have the most cap space in the league this offseason. So not only could they land Deshaun Watson, they could give Deshaun Watson a contract that he wants. So that's number one. And then that's what makes New York so valuable. The other thing, too, about the Jets is they got the number 2 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade that pick away to get Deshaun Watson, or if they trade down for more draft capital. I mean, either way, you're looking at the Jets, I think, as the front runners. Miami would be interesting because Miami has the third overall pick because of the Texans. So, I mean, the Texans could probably send Deshaun Watson to Miami just so they can get that third overall pick back. The other thing, too, that's very interesting about all this, especially when you talk about the Bears, is the Bears don't really have any valuable asset. I mean, their most valuable asset is Allen Robinson, and he's a free agent. So, like, you're not going to be able to leverage him as any sort of any sort of trade package because he's not really on your team right now. He's not on the team. He is a free agent. Allen Robinson is a very valuable wide receiver, not just to the Bears, but in the National Football League. I think Allen Robinson's a top 10 receiver in the league. I mean, what he's done in 3 years in Chicago has eclipsed what he did 4 years in Jacksonville. And I mean, it's unfortunate for Allen Robinson. I think this is the best situation. I think if I'm Allen Robinson, I'd rather be a free agent than be a trade piece. At least I would have some say in where I go. With that being said, though, I mean, again, just going back to the original point of this, Mitchell Trubisky, does it make sense now for Mitchell Trubisky to have been picked over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes? No. But again, as I said, hindsight's 2020. No one knew that Patrick Mahomes was going to be this. I think the Bears deserve a pass for passing on Patrick Mahomes. They don't deserve a pass on passing on Deshaun Watson. Best case scenario for the Bears, I don't know. Like Mitchell Trubisky wakes up and decides he wants to be this elite quarterback. Because here's the thing, like the best quarterback in Bears history is Jay Cutler. And Jay Cutler, wasn't that great either. So like and Mitchell Trubisky might be the second best quarterback in Bears history. So like, and he's not that good. So like, it says a lot about the Bears and their quarterback history. The point is, I think maybe Mitchell Trubisky turned it around. I do agree with you, though. I think Matt Nagy deserves a lot more of the blame than Mitchell Trubisky does. I think Mitchell Trubisky has been the victim of a similar situation to what we've seen Ryan Tannehill's situation, where it's just bad coaching. And I think that's really what it's boiled down to. I think if you get a different coach in Chicago, maybe Mitchell Trubisky plays better. Maybe he doesn't. Now, if you get a new coach and he doesn't play better, then, of course, Mitchell Trubisky is the problem. I don't think they should pull the trigger on Mitchell Trubisky just yet. I think they can give him another year or two, because here's the thing. As long as Aaron Rodgers is playing in Green Bay, which we're about to talk about in literally 30 seconds, as long as Aaron Rodgers is playing in Green Bay, you can kiss the way the division goodbye. You can definitely kiss the Super Bowl goodbye in terms of NFC North teams. So, I mean, obviously, as long as he's healthy. When he's not healthy, then, of course, the division's up for grabs. But as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy after what we just saw him do this past season, you're just playing for second. So let's calm down on the win talk. Let's calm down on the Mitchell Trubisky talk. It means a lot coming from Packers fans because we hate the Bears, but I think we should calm down on the Trubisky talk just for another season.
What I will say is that I'd be ready to move on, but it'd be moving on from both Nagy and Trubisky. Yeah, I'd throw my hat. Like, I'd have to be like, the only people who should not be looking to trade for Deshaun Watson, in my estimation, that's the Packers, the Chiefs, the Bills. Yeah, those are the only three teams, in my estimation, that should not be calling Houston to see. So yeah, Chicago has to do that. Oof. I don't know what their answer is. I will say again, Trubisky did get a raw deal because he was pulled when the team was 3-0, which is really weird. Even if he's not doing what you think he should be doing, the team hasn't lost. Yeah, like he hasn't cost you a game. So why are you moving on from that? We have a saying here, like in the West Indies, like when it comes to cricket, you don't change a winning team. You just don't.
No, you don't.
So if the team is 3-0, you don't move on. Yes, there are limitations, but he hasn't cost you a win just as yet. They don't have the draft capital to get quarterback that they probably should want in this draft. I also make a call to see, because I suspect that Atlanta will be trading up or drafting a quarterback at their spot at number 4. So I'd call about, Matt Ryan, if indeed you think you can make a move in terms of getting back to the playoffs, because you did make it to the playoffs, albeit that it took an extra spot, that you had to add an extra spot for the Chicago Bears to make it. But if you do believe in this and you do think that you are going to bring back Allen Robinson, even though apparently the organization has not spoken to Allen Robinson since the start of off-season, if you think you're going to get Allen Robinson back and you think you can make a run for the playoffs, I'd give Atlanta a call and see what it would take to get Matt Ryan.
I'd love to see Matt Ryan in Chicago. Matt Ryan's another one of those guys that is incredibly talented and doesn't get the recognition because he's on a bad team. I mean, he threw for Yeah, he also had a quiet season last year. He threw for like 4,500 yards or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So Matt Ryan in Chicago would be nice. I wouldn't like that, obviously, as a Packers fan. I like that as a football fan. It would be nice to see Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan go at it twice a year. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, again, like I said, Packers 13-3. There's really not much to say here. I guess this entire segment is just going to be centered around my hot take. So let's just get right to my hot take. But first, also, I love this quote. Three nice go.
I love
my
it.
hot take, and it's only a hot take because I'm a Packers fan, and for those who know me, I'm always going to ride with the Packers. But when the Packers when Rodgers broke his collarbone a few years ago, and Deshaun Kaiser was our backup, I still thought we were going to make the playoffs. Like I am the biggest Packers fan. I always have faith in the Packers. After watching the last two seasons, I think the Packers are still going to be in the mix. I do. I think our championship window has closed. I think the window for us to make and win the Super Bowl has closed. And there's a number of reasons why. The primary reason is number one, the NFC East. I mean, the NFC, not the NFC East. The NFC conference is always a toss-up. There are always at least 5 or 6 teams heading into the season that could possibly be contenders. That number gets narrowed down to like 3 midway through, and it jumps back up to 6. And then every playoff team just is able to, if one of them is able to catch lightning in the ball, they can make it. We were a victim of it. The year after we won the Super Bowl, the Giants caught lightning in the bottle. They win the Super Bowl. They've done it twice. They did it twice under Eli Manning. So like the NFC is just really a big toss-up. It doesn't matter how many games you win, as long as you make the playoffs, you're eligible. AFC, not so much. AFC, there's always going to be 1 or 2 teams, and those 1 or 2 teams is one of those teams is usually the one that makes the Super Bowl. Not many people thought the Buccaneers were going to make the Super Bowl, not because they weren't good, but just because there were a lot of other good teams, Packers being one of them. The big reason, though, why I think that our window is closed, at least for the moment, is twofold. First of all, we are over the cap right now, and the cap is expected to decrease. So we're going to have to get rid of a lot of guys. Namely, and I think the most important player on to our success, aside from Aaron Rodgers, is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is the top 5 running back in the league. Aaron Jones's agent is not known for doing team-friendly deals. And if we're going to keep Aaron Jones, it's either going to be under the tag or it's going to be a team-friendly deal. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to do a team-friendly deal. And I think in that regard, that's going to be a big hit on our Super Bowl aspirations next season. The other thing, too, is take it for nothing. But, I mean, you have to analyze it for what it is. You have to look at all the cards you have on the table. Aaron Rodgers doesn't know what he's doing next year. I think it's more likely that he stays than he goes. I do think, however, and I said this on an episode not too long ago when I was talking with someone else, Chad from Chad Burns Show, about just the amount of quarterback moves we could see. I did say I think whether or not Aaron Jones stays or goes plays a big part in whether or not Aaron Rodgers stays or goes. Because as I mentioned, Aaron Jones is, I think, the second best player on this team. I mean, and that includes Devontae Adams. I think it's Rodgers, Jones, Adams. Although, of course, you can flip Adams and Jones any week of the season. The point is, I think Aaron Jones's availability for the Packers plays a big role because we don't really have a rushing attack outside of Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon had played a few games last season. He did have that one good game against the Titans. That's because it was snowing, and the Titans' rush defense isn't that good. Jamal Williams gets a handful of carries a season. He doesn't really do a lot with it unless Aaron Jones is doing really well, and then defense isn't accounting for Jamal Williams. So I say all that to say, while I'm a diehard Packers fan, I will always love the Packers. I don't care if we're 0-16. I will always don green and gold. I don't think, at least for the next year or two, that we will be legitimate championship contenders until we get this money figured out because, as I mentioned, because of COVID-19, the cap is expected to go down heading into next season. I don't know how much, but we're already over the cap right now. So, like, we're going to have to let a lot of guys go. There's going to be a lot of guys that aren't getting deals that they like. Aaron Jones might be one of them. So I just think that at least for the foreseeable future, for the next year or two, I don't think our window to win a championship is open. I think maybe it reopens once we can figure out the cap and we can move some stuff around. But it pains me to say it, though, because I think we're Super Bowl contenders all the time. It doesn't matter who's on the roster. This is the first time in a long time I've said the Packers aren't Super Bowl contenders.
So, I was actually expecting a hotter take, not to, disrespect your take, because
yeah.
I kind of lean towards it. So I'll give a slightly different take. I spoke to one of the Packers digital reporters. We had him on the show right before, I want to say, the NFC title game. Oh, and I told him the reason I figured we had to win this season that just passed is because the roster is not going to be as good for the foreseeable future. So I agree with you there. In that, Aaron Jones is likely not coming back. I don't have him as high on the pecking order as you do, though. I have Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Think Tide, Zadarius Smith, then Jair Alexander, David Bakhtiari, and somewhere behind there, then I'll put Aaron Jones. Because, like, when you look, Rodgers is the best at his position, or second best if you put in Patrick Mahomes. Devontae is the best at his position. Bakhtiari is the best at his position. And then I think Zadarius Smith is one of the most underrated players in the entire NFL. So I then put Aaron Jones there behind him. So as I was talking to him, and this is, Wes Hodquits, he was on our show, and I told him, not since the 2014 team that also lost the NFC title game to Seattle have I seen a Packers team this complete. So I figured this was a team that had to win it because, as you mentioned, Aaron Jones, the only way we bring back Aaron Jones, and it won't be on a team-friendly deal, is on the franchise tag. And Green Bay, as a team, does not have a tradition of using it. Furthermore, we have never used the franchise tag or transition tag on any player. It's never happened. Does Mike Gutekunst do that? No. I'm not sure. He is a disciple of Ted Thompson, who has never done that. But you've seen Gutekunst show he's shown a willingness to kind of depart a bit from culture when he spent big in free agency 2 seasons ago on Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, and Adrian Amos. So you've seen that he, can depart from a culture a little bit. So Aaron Jones is only coming back if we tag him. And if you hear Gutekunst talk about it, it looks like he is considering that.
Yeah.
But that's just one piece. Who is not coming back for certain, it looks like, our pro center, Corey Linsley. And that is also an equally valuable part of the offense to Aaron Jones. Like, I think PFF graded him the best pass blocking center in the entire league, and top three in terms of run blocking. And this is a guy, obviously, that is given huge responsibilities in terms of calling out coverages, in terms of calling out blocking schemes, where to shift the lane, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that is just as valuable a loss as Aaron Jones. And the reason I see that, no, I know you're not as high on A.J. Dillon, and initially I wasn't either, and Jamal Williams. But I want to point out that Aaron Jones's rise to stardom is not a coincidence in that it is tied to Matt LaFleur, and I'll get to that. Because you realize he's gone over 1,000 yards each of the 2 seasons that Matt LaFleur has been the head coach.
Yeah.
And if you've watched enough of my shows, I keep talking about this. There is something to this zone running scheme that has been developed by Kyle Shanahan's father, Mike Shanahan, who was the Super Bowl winning head coach in Denver with, I want to say, Terrell Davis and John Elway.
Yep.
He went to Washington, and then, as you know, he brought his son, Kyle Shanahan, as the offensive coordinator. What a lot of people don't know, Sean McVay was the tight ends coach in that offense. Matt LaFleur was the quarterbacks coach in the offense.
Yep.
And under Mike, they all learned from Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur's younger brother, Mike LaFleur, who is now the offensive coordinator in New York. Much success out there with Robert Saleh as the new head coach for the Jets. All of them run the exact same offense. All of them.
Yep. Yep.
And whoever running back they plug back there just has a successful season. And they like to do it by committee. A lot of people don't realize when you look at the situation. Sean McVay, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. They make a Super Bowl run with two, I want to say, Tevin Coleman and Devon Freeman. That's one.
Yeah,
Tevin Coleman. Yeah. That was their running attack. They made the Super Bowl. The very next year, Sean McVay, same offense, Super Bowl. The very next year after that, Kyle Shanahan is the head coach of the 49ers, same offense, Super Bowl. Matt LaFleur, 2 straight years, NFC title game with that same offense. So initially, I was worried like you that Aaron Jones probably is not coming back. But when you look from Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, it's the name I was looking for. And then you look, I think one of those two then ends up in San Francisco again with Matt Breida. You saw in LA, what's the name I'm looking for? Number 30. Pardon me?
Cam Akers.
No, before Cam Akers. He's in Atlanta now.
Oh, Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley. This offense produces, and I mean, Todd Gurley was great on his own, but this offense produces people to run behind. Like in San Francisco, they just plugged in anybody, whether it was Matt Breida, whether it was Raheem Mostert, either Devontae Freeman or St. Tevin Coleman. You just plug running backs in this system and they produce.
Yeah.
And I think that is why they drafted A.J. Dillon last season, figuring that they will not be able to bring back Aaron Jones at that high price he's going to ask, because he has brought in Drew Rosenhaus, and he does not settle for team-friendly deals.
Yeah.
And I think Miami is going to pay Aaron Jones. It's been rumored that they have a big deal for him. If A.J. Dillon has to be our workhorse back, my only concern is where Aaron Jones's huge upside comes for me is as a wide receiver. We've seen where Aaron Jones, you can split him up wide and have him as a wide. I think not this season just gone, but the season before that, when Devontae Adams had a huge stretch of injuries, Aaron Jones was just doing it as a wide receiver to the point where I think he was second in the team in receptions. You can look that up.
He was, yeah. He led when Devontae when he went down with turf toe last year, not this past year, but the season before, Matt LaFleur's first season. Aaron Jones led the team in receptions, and Devontae Adams absent.
So yeah, that is where you're going to miss the value. Jamal Williams is equally a good pass catcher, but in terms of running the football, he does not have the value of Aaron Jones. And for such a small man, he packs a punch, and he's a home run hitter, because you can have him bottled up for an entire game, and then boom, he hits a big 70-yarder. I think he had 2 runs over 70 yards this season in one season alone. But I get back to the initial point. It feels that the window is closing because Aaron Jones is going to be gone. Corey Linsley is gone. And those are 2 Pro Bowlers that you're not going to be able to replace. So that's why I said it felt they had to win the chip this past season, because the team is not going to be as good as it is going forward.
Yeah.
But am I willing to say that the window is closed? No. In that Aaron Rodgers is not going anywhere. I have it on good authority, that he is going to be extended. I don't know to the tune of what, but they're working on an extension. They're going to make Devontae Adams the highest paid wide receiver in all of football. David Bakhtiari should be good to go by the start of next season. Zadarius Smith is still there. So those are your 4 cornerstones. And you've seen, because as much as I love Corey Linsley, there was a span of, I want to say, 2 games he went down, and they just moved Elgton Jenkins to that center spot, and it was like Corey Linsley wasn't even there.
Yeah.
They missed no drop. There was no drop off. And that just speaks to the quality that Elgton Jenkins is at that left guard position. If they can draft well, and they really did not draft well last season, and we guess we'll get to that, but they do still have a chance to draft well. There are rumors that they're going after Will Fuller in free agency.
Good.
Yeah, there are big rumors. Once Aaron Rodgers is there, Devontae Adams, Zadarius Smith, and David Bakhtiari, I still do think that this is the class of the NFC North. You just have to win your division to get in, and anything can happen from there.
Yeah.
So I agree the team is not as good as this season, but I think the window is still open ever so slightly.
If I were to rank out of 10, all right, that was if someone come up to me and say, if you could rank out of 10 the chances that the Packers make the Super Bowl next year, I would put it at a 6. I think a lot of it has to do with the Packers. I think a lot of it also has to do with, again, as I mentioned, NFC is just a toss-up, man. Like you've got here's the thing. There's no denying, as we mentioned at the top of the show, I think the Rams are Super Bowl contenders with Matt Stafford. They've got the best defense in the league. They've been looking for a solid quarterback. They've got it. I think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. The one thing we can say is we will have a Super Bowl contender disappear from the bunch, and that's the Saints, because they won't have Drew Brees most likely, and trying to figure that out is an issue. And even if they did have Drew Brees, no one's going to – the Saints just aren't a threat anymore. It'd be best for the Saints if Drew Brees retires. We're still waiting and hoping for that he does, because I think it'd also be best for Drew Brees to hang it up. Obviously, of course, you have Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've got Tom Brady. A lot of that team's going to be coming back. Some of that team won't be coming back just because, again, when you get a Super Bowl caliber team like that, and you've got a lot of stars, specifically on that offensive side, that's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to be a lot to try to work around and make team-friendly deals and get people to reconstruct. I know, Tom Brady's going to reconstruct because he always reconstructs. I think Gronk might reconstruct. Of course, you still got the looming threat of trying to figure out if they're going to bring back Chris Godwin in free agency, which they likely will. And I don't think there's anything pointing to the fact that they won't. But as I said on another episode, as I said on my episode with Adam, if you have to pick between Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, you pick Antonio Brown 10 times out of 10. There's no debating that. So there's that. You've got the Seahawks, and although there's this speculation of whether or not won't they trade Russell Wilson. If I had to bet, if I was a betting man, I'd say Russell Wilson stays in Seattle at least for one more year. And as long as Russell Wilson's in Seattle with those weapons, the defense is suspect, yes, but the offense is just good enough where they could be Super Bowl contenders as well. The 49ers are Super Bowl contenders. They just looked bad last year because they were plagued with injury. They, like the Rams, when healthy, are one of the better defenses in the league. Their only real issue is Jimmy Garoppolo's, much like Kirk Cousins, he's good enough to get you beat. He's not going to win you a championship. He can get you close to one, but he won't win you one. And we saw that in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. So I say all that to say I think the window closing has less to do with the Packers, although that also obviously plays a big part of it. But I think it has less to do with the Packers and more to do with the other teams around them. The other thing too is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think it's possible that the Cowboys or the Washington football team could become Super Bowl contenders next season. And the reason I say that simply is because the Cowboys have the talent. I mean, the coaching stinks, but every year the Cowboys fans up and down the country and all around the world say that it's going to be the year, and it never is. But like maybe this year could be the closest they've gotten in a long time. I mean, this could be Dak Prescott's last season in Dallas. Obviously, the coaching stinks. Maybe that's high expectations or delusion, whatever. The Cowboys are still good football team in a bad division, so maybe that's good for something. The Washington football team, they had in the second half of the season a really good defense. In fact, they had a top 5 defense towards the end of the season last year. Their big issue that they have to figure out right now is quarterback. I think much like the Bears could potentially be in the running for Matt Ryan if Atlanta decides to blow it up, I think Washington could also be in the running for Matt Ryan if they decide to blow it up. And I think it would be more likely that Washington lands Matt Ryan over at Chicago, because even though they're in the same boat and even though they both made the playoffs and so they're kind of low on the pecking order of the draft, I think that Washington could afford Matt Ryan. They wouldn't have to give up as much as Chicago would to get Matt Ryan to go to Chicago. So I say all that to say, I think the window is closing. I don't think it's closed, obviously, because we still have that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. And as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy and on the field, we're going to be a threat. I don't think we're going to be a legitimate threat. I think next season is going to be much like our first season with Matt LaFleur. Where we win it, we win. We have a solid record, but we're winning games we really shouldn't be winning. And it's really close. And then, we get blown out at some point, and then we see the real. Because here's the thing. I love the Packers. But again, when you've got the come up of all these teams, and it's like we're kind of falling down because we're not bringing back, and all these other teams are coming up because they're adding and maturing, and things. It makes it tough. I think this would be our toughest. This would be our toughest season in terms of trying to win a Super Bowl since we won the Super Bowl, and that's only because when we won the Super Bowl, we won all road games to get there. But this would be our toughest season, our toughest road to the Super Bowl since we won the Super Bowl next season upcoming because of all those things you and I just mentioned.
So you mentioned about the other teams, and here's the thing, not to sound like an arrogant Packers fan, but there are really only two teams, and probably just really one, and that's the defending Super Bowl champs, that really don't have a huge question mark, because you bring up a lot of teams, but I'm going to go one by one and show you why you shouldn't be overly concerned. Let's start with the NFC East teams. Even if Dallas brings back Dak Prescott, right? Like, your defense is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, atrocious.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy is not known for having great defenses. I mean, we know that personally.
We know that for a fact, yeah.
Personally. And then their offensive line, which was once the hallmark of their offense, is getting old quickly and was injured and banged up. So even if Dak Prescott returns, there is no answer, or this does not solve a lot of the issues in Dallas, number one. They have to address defense. I mean, at all levels, whether it's talking about at front, linebacker level, and in coverage.
Yeah.
Washington is like, they have a huge question mark at the most important position in the entire game, and that's quarterback. Like, you just released Alex Smith, and you do not have the quarterback of the future in that quarterback room. So, let's scrap them off a potential Super Bowl contender list. Then you get to the NFC South. So obviously the Super Bowl champs are who they are. Like, a really, really good front seven in that defense. There's no argument. There's no debating that. Then you look at their weapons. Chris Godwin is likely coming back. You have still under contract Mike Evans. Gronk will, like, once Tom Brady is playing, Gronk is going to play. There's no doubt about that. And once Tom Brady and Gronk are playing, so too will Antonio Brown. So their offense and defense, they have Ronald Jones in the backfield, who is a running back. I personally like. I think he's very underrated. They added the young left tackle in Tristan Wirfs, and he had a great season. So, like, they're in a good position. So, like, you start at the top of the list, definitely Tampa Bay, no problem. The New Orleans Saints are built to win now, but as you mentioned, that you don't know if Drew Brees is coming back. And even if he does come back, when I thought about that road to the Super Bowl, I don't want to say this because it may sound like, I'm saying it after the fact, but I told everyone the only team I worried about coming to Lambeau and winning were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I know for a fact that the New Orleans Saints do not want to play outdoor and in cold weather situation. They don't. It's a dumb team.
Absolutely
And we're not afraid of them. We went into their building without Devontae Adams and racked up over 30 points comfortably. Without Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the league. So that is not a team I'm worried about, even if Drew Brees comes back. And, like, if he doesn't come back, what are you solving your situation with? Are you going to trade for Russell Wilson? You don't have the draft capital to do such. Jameis Winston is a turnover-prone quarterback. I saw that because I'm a huge Florida State University fan. I saw that firsthand in college, and I saw it when he was at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And quite frankly, I do not think that Taysom Hill is a starting quarterback caliber player. So, again, that is a huge question mark at the game's most important position, so I'm not worried about the Saints. You talk about the Rams. That defense is suspect at the very least. Like, their back end for definitely, when you look at their safeties and their cornerbacks, and this is not a conference to want that sort of question marks. And then you correctly said, I don't expect Russell Wilson to go anywhere but the cloud of what is going on, because make no mistake, whether he said he's not making a trade demand, what we saw was a trade demand. No one says, I don't want to be traded, but if you have to trade me, these are the 4 places I want to go to. That is as passive aggressive as it gets. That cloud, and I told Adam this before, so I'm going to say it right here now. That relationship between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll has 1 year left maximum. After the 2021 season, Seattle is going to have to get rid of one of them. And it's left to John Schneider to see who he's going to get rid of. My bet is on Russell Wilson because of what he could get back for Russell Wilson. You let a championship caliber coach and Pete Carroll go, yeah, you can replace him probably, and it's hard to replace a quarterback in Russell Wilson, but do you want to keep a quarterback that does not want to be there? And Russell Wilson clearly no longer wants any part of Pete Carroll. So I'm not worried about, again, the Seahawks. You just said Jimmy Garoppolo is a quarterback good enough to get you beat. We saw that in Super Bowl when he missed an easy throw that would have essentially nailed it for the San Francisco 49ers. They're going to have some roster turnover. That defense is still a championship caliber defense, but they're going to have some roster turnover. Mm-hmm. The only two teams in the entire conference who I would say I'm worried about, and only one I put above the Green Bay Packers at the start of the 2021 season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The other team I'd be concerned about are those Los Angeles Rams. Know that they have a good quarterback in Matt Stafford. But even then, there are some question marks. They do have all of their good players locked up, from Stafford to Aaron Donald to Michael Brockers. Cam Akers is just a rookie. Jalen Ramsey just got a huge extension. So their core players are locked up. But there are some question marks in the back end of that defense. So I'd put Tampa Bay, and yes, we are getting worse, but Marcus, the only team really I am overly concerned about in the entire NFC conference would be the Buccaneers.
No, yeah, I agree. I think I see, because here's the thing, and as we continue to do these shows on air, off air, you will soon learn I get very over analytical very quickly. Today it's the Packers aren't going to win the Super Bowl. Tomorrow it's the Packers are going to win 3 in a row. Like, you just never know. That's just how I am. Maybe, I don't know, but as it stands right now, I am a little concerned. Not a lot. I do just have a little bit concerned because I want to be. I would like to see us win another. It would be nice to see Aaron Rodgers.
Keep the faith, Marcus.
Absolutely.
Believe it.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, I think that's a nice way to close out the show. I want to thank you again. You said at the top of the show, on air, off air, through text, all that. I want to thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. It's always great to talk football. It's even better when I get to talk football with a Packers fan. So it's great.
Always.
Viewers, if you want to see more of Justin Marville, you can follow him on Instagram at this Justin. The I is a 1, so it's this just 1 in. You can follow him on Instagram. You can also check out his show as well. It's on YouTube. He streams live on YouTube on Mondays. And as I mentioned on the episode with Matt Adam, he also goes live with Adam from What Offseason Pod every Thursday on Instagram Live. So you can check all that stuff out. I'll be sure to include all that stuff in the description below so you guys don't forget. Again, Justin, I want to thank you for coming on the show to talk football, talk NFC North football with us, Packers football with us. I do greatly appreciate it.
No, Marcus, the pleasure is all mine. I could talk another hour about Packers football, believe in me. And this is not going to be a one-off situation. Whenever you want to talk Packers football, basketball, anything, just give me a shout, and I would love to come on the show. So I want to thank you for inviting me and having me on.
Oh, absolutely.
And guys, just Marcus's content is great, so please just keep watching and keep following. I follow and watch, so I don't know what y'all doing, or well, you do if you're watching, but I watch it, so please continue doing the same.
Man, I greatly appreciate it. Again, I'll be sure to include all of Justin's links in the description below so you can check all of his content and be on the lookout maybe in the near future to me be on Justin's show. I don't know, maybe. With that being said,
don't do that.
As always, this episode was powered by Poddex. Head over to poddex.com. Use code GTP2020 for 10% off your order. We are also official and brand ambassador for Goat Fuel. Head over to goatfuel.com. Use code GOATFAM10. GOATFAM in all caps. GOATFAM10 for 10% off your order on Goat Fuel and get energy drinks in the works. So again, thank you, Justin, for coming on. To the viewers, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss any more of our awesome content. And be on the lookout for more content, not just with Justin, but with Adam and Spencer and all the other people that we have coming on the show. It's a good time to be a sports podcaster, that's for sure. So thank you guys all for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your life.